Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of Gary Stevenson. Now, this is a guy who was once the most profitable trader at one of the world's biggest banks. And then he just walked away from it all. Why? Well, he's now on this pretty unlikely mission to convince the entire world that it's finally time to tax the super rich. So let's unpack how he got here and what his big argument really means for all of us.
To really get what he's doing, you have to understand the stakes as he sees them. Stevenson believes we're at a critical tipping point, and for him, this isn't some political debate. He says it's a mathematical certainty, with some really dire consequences if we ignore it.
So, who is this guy anyway? I mean, to really understand his argument, you have to know where he comes from. He's definitely not your typical economist or some political activist. And honestly, his background is a huge part of his story.
Stevenson's journey is, frankly, incredible. He calls himself a hood rat kid who just happened to be good at math. He goes from that to the London School of Economics, and then becomes Citibank's most profitable trader. And get this, his biggest, most profitable bet was that the economy wouldn't recover after the 2008 crash. He was right. So he wins the game, makes millions, and then he just walks away to try and change the rules.
Okay, so this brings us to his core diagnosis of the problem. Stevenson argues that all this growing wealth inequality isn't just some abstract concept you read about. No, he calls it a squeeze-out, a force that he says is actively pushing the middle and working classes out of the economy. His diagnosis really starts with a pretty simple question. If the wealth of the very richest people is growing so much faster than the actual economy, where's that extra wealth coming from? He argues it's not being created out of thin air. It has to be coming from somewhere or someone. The engine for this explosive growth, according to Stevenson, is something called passive income. Now, this isn't a salary you get from a job. This is the money your money makes for you, just by owning stuff. And that, he says, is the key difference between being rich from a high-paying job and being truly staggeringly wealthy. So to make this really concrete, Stevenson uses this mind-bending figure. He estimates someone with £1 billion in assets can pull in about £1 million a week in passive income. A week? What do you even do with that much money? You can't spend it all. Stevenson's point is that the only real option is to use it to buy up more of the economy's assets. More companies, more stocks, and more houses. And this quote right here, it just nails the direct result of that squeeze. This isn't just a theory, right? It's why buying a house feels basically impossible for so many people. The very assets that ordinary people need, like a home, are the exact same assets the super rich are buying up as investments. And that competition, well, it drives prices into the stratosphere, way beyond what a normal salary can ever hope to cover. So if that's the diagnosis, what's his prescription? Well, it's simple, it's pretty radical, and he's actually very specific about what he thinks needs to be done. First things first, he makes a really crucial distinction. He is not talking about raising income tax. That's a tax on work. He's talking about a wealth tax, which is a tax on the enormous piles of assets, stocks, property, you name it, owned by a tiny fraction of the population. He wants to tax wealth, not work. His proposal has 3 really clear steps. And importantly, it's not a tax on everyone, not even close. The tax would only apply to personal wealth above a $10 million threshold. So, for example, if you had $12 million in assets, you'd only pay that 1% to 2% tax on the $2 million over the limit. For the vast majority of people, this tax would never, ever apply. As you can imagine, an idea this radical faces a huge amount of pushback. Critics argue it's totally unworkable and would just wreck the economy. And that leads us right into the major challenges and the counter-arguments. The central question from critics really boils down to practicality. They argue that, a wealth tax might sound good in theory, but in the real world, it's a policy that's pretty much destined to fail. So the arguments against a wealth tax usually fall into about 5 key buckets. You'll hear that the rich will just pack up and leave, that it'll harm the economy, that it's been tried and it's failed in other countries, that the wealthy will always find loopholes to get around it, and finally, that it's just too darn difficult to even implement and collect. But Stevenson, he has answers for these. On the argument that the rich will just leave, He counters that, well, you can't easily move a skyscraper or a massive UK-based company to the Bahamas. As he puts it, their most valuable assets are here, and they can be taxed. You just need the political will to actually do it. And all of this brings us back to his method. I mean, why is this former top trader not just lobbying politicians in private? Why is he trying to start a movement on YouTube, of all places? Well, the simple answer is he says he tried the traditional route. He spent years in academia and with think tanks, but he came to believe they were broken and just unwilling to really address the problem. He thinks the elites running these institutions actually benefit from the way things are, so they have zero real incentive to change it. And this is exactly why Stevenson is betting everything on this fundamental shift in how political power is built. He sees traditional institutions losing their grip while social media offers this direct line to millions of people. His whole strategy is to bypass the old gatekeepers and create such a huge popular demand for his ideas that politicians will eventually have no choice but to listen.
And so this is really the core of his whole experiment. It's a massive gamble. Can one person, armed with a YouTube channel, actually build a movement so large and so loud that it overcomes all that elite opposition and fundamentally changes how an entire economy works? Whether he succeeds or fails, his journey has already forced a conversation that a lot of people were not ready to have.